They tied her to the tree like she was trash. Not with cuffs, that might have shown some ounce of procedure, but with plastic zip ties. Pulled so tight her fingers started to purple. One officer held her shoulders while the other cinched the straps, wrapping them around the trunk of the pine like she was a loose bag of supplies. She didn't say a word, didn't scream, didn't fight, didn't ask for a name, badge, or justification. She just watched the sky through the needles above her, like it wasn't even the first time this had happened. The older cop spit beside her boot. Don't get smart. You people think silence makes you noble. It just makes you harder to process. The younger officer shifted his stance. He hadn't looked her in the eyes once. What neither of them knew was this. She had written the very ethics manual they were violating, page by page, clause by clause. They were tying up the woman who taught the system how to punish people like them. Tell us where you're watching from, and what you'd do if you saw this. Her name was Moren Blake, but they hadn't asked for it. They didn't care. To them, she was just another quiet black woman in a hoodie, sitting on the wrong bench, in the wrong corner of Elder Pine Reserve, Lakefield, Colorado, a nobody with a book. And in Lakefield, being a nobody while black was more than enough to be suspicious. Just 20 minutes earlier, Moren had been doing what she always did on Tuesdays, reading. She liked the far edge of the park, the northeast trailhead. It was peaceful, unwatched. She sat on a worn bench beneath a pine tree that had seen more winters than she had. The book in her lap, a leather-bound classic, Baldwin Essays, dog-eared and annotated like it was alive. The wind shifted slightly. A few crows shuffled overhead. She was halfway through a passage on Dignity when the Lakefield PD SUV rumbled up the gravel path. Two men stepped out, white, one late 40s, built like a linebacker, mirrored sunglasses, the other younger, maybe 30, uncertain in posture, eyes darting. The older one got to the point fast. No sitting this deep in the trail. Ma'am, private conservation zone. Gonna need to see some ID. Moren didn't look up. The officer cleared his throat louder. You deaf or defiant? She raised her eyes slowly, as if finishing a sentence first. I didn't see a sign, she said, calm and clear. Yeah, well, I'm telling you now. Let's go. ID. She blinked. Under what charge? The man's tone sharpened. Failure to comply. Trespassing. Threat potential if you don't start cooperating. The younger officer looked uneasy. She's not doing anything. She doesn't belong here. The older one snapped. Those words, she doesn't belong here. Moren had been hearing them since she was 9 years old. In schools, boardrooms, airports. But she never let them define her. Today would be no different, only this time, she wouldn't even need to answer. She stood up slowly. That, somehow, irritated the older officer more. When she declined to produce ID, citing her rights, he growled something about non-compliant suspect and radioed for backup. When none was available, he made the call himself. Secure her to the tree, he told the rookie. What? You heard me. Detain her till transport arrives. We don't let runners go. The younger cop hesitated, but Moren didn't resist. She let them bind her like a problem, something wild and unwelcome. They zip-tied her to the tree in silence. No Miranda rights, no paperwork, no photo. They thought she was helpless. What they didn't see was the small movement in her jaw. Tap, tap, tap. Her tongue tapped the back of her upper molars. 3 rhythmic touches. A green signal blinked invisibly from a subdermal chip just behind her gum line. And somewhere, 3 states away, a data signal was tripped. The Federal Law Enforcement Ethics Review System, FLEARS, was never meant to be public. It monitored internal behavior patterns, live officer conduct, and ethics anomalies across 42 states. And only one person alive still held its override authority, Moren Blake. She hadn't used her voice key in 11 years. Until now, back in the park. The older cop leaned against the hood of the SUV. Think she's one of those protest types. Nah, the rookie muttered. She didn't even record. Good. Last thing I need is another viral crybaby video. He laughed. They didn't see the blue sedan that had parked across the field. License plate Federal. Didn't notice the woman jogging by. Phone angled low. Filming. Didn't notice how the breeze suddenly stopped. 7 minutes after Moren whispered her override, the system finished confirmation. $1. $45 billion in operational grants to 37 law enforcement agencies were frozen, all flagged under Clause Delta X Blake, Emergency Ethics Shutdown. Lakefield PD was one of the first departments on that list, but they wouldn't find out for another 48 hours. By then, the grant officer would be gone. The training academy contract revoked, and 5 internal affairs subpoenas would arrive. Pre-signed, Moren said nothing as she stood, bound to the pine tree. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She waited, because she didn't need to do anything. She'd written the rules. All she had to do now was watch them break themselves on her silence. By the time the backup unit finally arrived at Elder Pine Reserve, Moren Blake had been tied to the tree for nearly 40 minutes. The sky above was a calm, clear stretch of pale blue. The wind had died down. Everything about the scene looked peaceful, unless you looked closely. Unless you looked at the black woman bound at the wrists and ankles with zip ties, her breathing slow, her gaze steady, and her silence louder than sirens. The new officer stepped out of the cruiser, clearly surprised. One muttered under his breath, "What the hell is this?" The older officer, Officer Rick Delaney, 24 years in the force, and proud of every year, didn't flinch. She refused to show ID. No name, no explanation, unresponsive. Could have been casing the park, waiting for some kid. He turned to the arriving backup, secured her until we sorted out. The rookie officer from earlier, Jenkins, shifted awkwardly. The new cop stared at Moren. She didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't plead. What none of them noticed, or chose to ignore, was that a woman in athletic wear was standing about 30 feet away, pretending to stretch. But she wasn't stretching. She was filming. She had been for the last 15 minutes, and her phone was live on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts all at once. The caption read, "Black elderly woman tied to tree by Lakefield PD for reading a book in the park." Within 12 minutes, the video had been shared 5,000 times. By the 30-minute mark, it had reached 112,000 views, and someone had tagged a Denver-based civil rights lawyer with 4.6 million followers. By 45 minutes, the story was trending under the hashtags, "Tied to a tree, Lakefield PD justice for Moren." But back at the station, none of that had reached Chief Warren Millstone. Warren Millstone sat in his office, drinking reheated coffee from a mug that said, "Real cops don't apologize." He had been chief of Lakefield PD for 7 years, a political appointee, ex-military, the kind who wore the badge more like armor than responsibility. His phone buzzed once. He ignored it. Buzzed again. Still ignored. The third buzz came with a knock on the door. It was Carrie, the admin assistant. "Chief," she said, poking her head in. "There's something going on online. I think you should see this." Millstone didn't even look up. "Let me guess. Some kid with a GoPro whining about his parking ticket?" "No, sir. It's a video. In the park. Elder Pine." He sighed, pulling the laptop toward him, tapping slowly with 2 fingers. "What is it now?" "Joggers mad about squirrels." Carrie just stood there. He hit play. The footage opened with a shaky zoom. You could see the woman's face, dignified, calm, strapped to the tree like a prisoner. 2 white officers laughing in the background. Millstone's eyes narrowed. "Turn that off." "Sir." "It's everywhere. The mayor's office already got 4 calls. And someone from Washington." "I said turn it off, but the internet doesn't turn off. And neither does justice when it finally wakes up." Back at the park, a second bystander had started filming, then a third. One young man even yelled out, "You know you're on camera, right?" "What the hell are you doing?" Delaney turned. "Keep walking. Son, this ain't your business. It is when you treat an old woman like she's a criminal." Another woman shouted, "Is this how y'all treat people here? What if she was white?" The younger cop, Jenkins, looked visibly shaken now. He stepped toward Delaney. Should we release her?" Delaney snapped. "Don't you dare. We're waiting for ID. Protocol. She's not resisting. We're literally..." "I said, don't touch her." Moren watched them argue. She didn't smile, didn't smirk, but her breathing slowed. Not because she was tired, because she could feel it. The shift, the world, finally, was looking back, miles away, in an unmarked government building. The FLIR's system was still running, The override that Moren had triggered hadn't just frozen funding. It had initiated a silent cascade. 37 police departments had lost access to federal use-of-force reports. 9 internal affairs databases were locked pending ethics certification. And most critically, Lakefield PD's entire bodycam cloud storage had been flagged for full review. At 11:34 a.m., an alert popped up on the dashboard of the State Department of Justice Ethics Office. Moren E. Blake. Emergency override confirmed. Code: FLIRS Delta X. Initiating Senate-level ethics inquiry. ETA: 72 hours. But back in Lakefield, they still thought she was nobody. Still thought she was just a frail woman with a book and an attitude. The shift finally hit Delaney when his own body cam went dark. No signal, no recording, just a blinking red message. Access revoked. Pending investigation. He stared at it like it was broken. Jenkins. Check yours. Same. What the hell? Then their radios began to buzz. Not with police chatter, but with encrypted alerts they couldn't access. Across the street, the woman filming whispered into her phone. She hasn't said a single word, but they're falling apart. Moren stood silently, back still pressed against the tree. She didn't flinch when the cameras turned, didn't move when the rookie tried, and failed to explain things to a growing crowd. She wasn't here to argue. She wasn't here to beg. She was here to watch the system expose itself. By noon, Elder Pine Reserve was no longer a quiet park. 3 camera crews had set up near the edge of the trail, Fox Local, Channel 9 Denver, and a small but aggressive team from Justice Now Media who streamed everything live. Behind them, 24 onlookers stood frozen, phones out, mouths open. Some came out of curiosity, some came out of anger, and some came because they recognized her face. Not from a mugshot, not from a trending video, but from Capitol hearings, ethics briefings, and classified advisory boards. Moren Blake, the woman zip-tied to a pine tree, wasn't just a civilian. She was the former lead federal ethics architect under the Department of Justice. The woman who co-designed FLIRS, the Federal Law Enforcement Ethics Review System, the same system that, as of this morning, had shut down access to $45 billion in law enforcement grants. And yet, she hadn't moved. She hadn't spoken. She just watched it. Meanwhile, inside the Lakefield mayor's office, panic had a name, and that name was Mayor Thad Purcell. He stood at his office window, shirt untucked, tie loose, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care if she's the goddamn Pope," he hissed. "You get her off that tree." Quietly, on the other end, Police Chief Millstone's voice cracked. "We can't." "Sir, the video's viral. There's lawyers. There's feds sniffing around." Jenkins tried to cut the zip ties, and the woman just stared at him. He froze up, stared at him. "Yes." Like she knew something. Purcell slammed his hand on the desk. "She knows how to break us, Warren. And you tied her to a tree." "I didn't. Delaney did." "I don't care who did it. Get her off the goddamn internet before we lose the damn town charter." Across town, at Lakefield PD HQ, internal systems were starting to fail. Grant applications, inaccessible. Bodycam footage database, locked. Use of force training server, corrupted. Badge renewal requests, blocked pending federal review. The IT team was calling it a network outage. But one officer, an older sergeant named Dorsey, had the nerve to say what no one else would. "Blake did this. She's not just some lady in the woods. She's the one who wrote the damn code." At 12:21, Mum, a black Suburban pulled up to the edge of Elder Pine. 2 women stepped out, suits, no insignia, no hesitation. They moved through the crowd with quiet force. One of them whispered to the camera crews, "Turn it off or be escorted." The Justice Now team refused. They kept filming, so did the live streamers, who'd now passed 300,000 viewers worldwide, inside the park. Jenkins, the rookie, walked slowly toward Moren. He had a pair of scissors in his hand. He crouched near her and whispered, "Ma'am, they want me to cut the ties." Moren didn't blink. She didn't answer. Just like earlier, he paused, then stood. I won't cut them unless you say I should." She didn't. One of the suited women stepped forward now. She leaned in, voice low, calm, rehearsed. "Dr. Blake, on behalf of the DOJ, We are initiating the first stage of Delta X intervention. A secure vehicle is ready to relocate you if you consent." Moren finally blinked, but her lips remained sealed. The agent continued, "We've received confirmation from FLIR's ops. 3 major agency grants have already been flagged for revocation. That includes Lakefield PD, Jefferson County Sheriff's, and Blue Ridge Academy." Still, silence. The agent adjusted her blazer. "Dr. Blake, if you say nothing, the system will proceed automatically." And that was exactly what Moren wanted. Across the country, in federal and state offices, the dominoes had begun to fall. By 12:34 p.m. 11 law enforcement agencies had been issued ethics blackout status. 5 training centers were being audited in real time. 2 private contractors lost clearance to provide tactical gear, all because of a single override, triggered by the woman tied to a tree. In D.C., a senior ethics officer named Carla Jimenez stared at the cascading dashboard. "What the hell did they do to her?" she muttered. Her assistant looked confused. "You know her?" Carla nodded slowly. "She trained me, taught me how to build systems that can't be bribed or bullied." She picked up the phone. "Get the FAA on standby and call the Senate committee chair. We may need hearings." Meanwhile, back in Lakefield, things were unraveling faster. A whistleblower from inside the PD had leaked Delaney's internal conduct file to a journalist. Turns out, this wasn't the first time Delaney had zip-tied someone non-compliant, but this was the first time it was filmed. And the first time his victim controlled the very system that funded his paycheck. The mayor called again, screaming, "Make her speak. Offer her money, an apology, a platform." But the woman in question, still bound, still silent, still watching. At 1:02 p.m., the DOJ agents tried one more time. "Dr. Blake," one said. "Quiet her now. Do you want us to remove you?" Moren finally spoke. One sentence. "I want them to do it." The agent paused. "Who?" "Ma'am." She tilted her head slightly toward Delaney. "The ones who put me here." That moment went viral too. Clipped, captioned, shared. "I want them to do it." Moren Blake. 1:02 p.m. In less than an hour, it became a movement slogan, printed on shirts, hashtagged into trending lists. Let them undo it. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's patient. It lets them tie the knot, then asks them to unfasten it in front of the world. The silence in Elder Pine Reserve was unnatural. Not the kind of peaceful quiet you'd expect from a forest, but a charged stillness, like the world was holding its breath. Every camera was pointed at Officer Delaney. His face, once hardened with smug contempt, now looked pale, sweaty, and unsure. In front of him stood a woman he thought was just a nobody in jogging shoes. Now he knew better. Now the whole country did. And now she had spoken. Just one sentence. "I want them to do it." Mayor Purcell's voice crackled over Delaney's radio, desperate and sharp. "Do it, Delaney. Just cut the damn ties and bow if you have to. The governor's calling." "This is DEFCON 2. Delaney's hand shook as he stepped forward. The zip ties around Moren's wrists weren't even military grade. He could cut them in one motion, but somehow they felt heavier now. She didn't flinch. She just watched him, not with hate, not even judgment, just that same calm stare that had broken Jenkins earlier. Delaney knelt slowly. He fumbled for the shears someone handed him. His hands were wet. "Ma'am," he started, then stopped. His voice caught. His fingers trembled too much to get the blade under the tie. He looked up at her again. She blinked. Once. That was it. Behind him, Jenkins, the rookie, stepped forward. "I got it," he said, his voice soft but certain. Delaney turned to glare at him. "Back off, rookie." But Jenkins didn't. He looked Moren in the eyes. "I don't think you should be the one to do this," he said to Delaney. "You tied her. She doesn't want your hands on her again." Delaney's jaw clenched, but he stepped back. Jenkins knelt. He didn't speak. He didn't ask permission. He just moved carefully, respectfully, sliding the blade under the wrist tie and slicing it clean. Then the ankles. Moren didn't move. She stood still even after the plastic dropped to the ground, as if waiting for something. The wind picked up. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman whispered, "She's free." But Moren wasn't done. She stepped forward, slowly. The camera crews parted like the Red Sea. Not a single word was said. 2 federal agents moved into step beside her, not in front, not leading, just following. Then the crowd saw it. The vehicle, a matte black SUV, idling at the edge of the park. No plates, no markings, not government issue, not civilian either, just untraceable. The door opened automatically. Moren paused just before stepping in. She turned her head, looking back, not at Jenkins, not at the press, not even at Delaney. She looked at the trees, the place where she'd been trussed up like an animal. And in a soft, level voice, barely above a whisper but somehow heard by everyone, she said, "The tree remembers." Then she climbed in. The door shut with a soft click, and the SUV pulled away, silently, like a shadow that didn't belong to this world. That 12-second clip became the second viral moment of the day. The tree remembers. A new wave of solidarity emerged. TikToks, murals, news anchors quoting her like scripture. Even late-night hosts replayed it with awe. She didn't yell. She didn't sue. She didn't even tweet. She just left us with a sentence that felt like Judgment Day. Meanwhile, at Lakefield PD, systems went dark again. The entire department was now flagged as ethics compromised. Tier 1, federal funding frozen. Equipment contracts nullified. Officers subpoenaed for retroactive conduct audits. The FBI's Civil Rights Division parked black vans outside the precinct within the hour. Jenkins, still standing in the park, took out his badge, stared at it for a long moment, then quietly removed it and placed it on the nearest bench. He wasn't resigning. He was switching sides. At City Hall, Mayor Purcell finally stopped yelling. His hands trembled as he read the breaking alert on his screen. All FLIR's Gov links suspended. Your municipality is now under federal ethics review. Estimated impact: 213 in suspended development grants. Effective immediately. He dropped the tablet. No press conference could fix this, because the story was no longer about Lakefield. It was now about America, and how it treated a woman who chose not to scream, not to fight, but to let the system she built, the very structure of ethical governance, speak on her behalf. Meanwhile, across state lines, in Chicago, a retired judge named Mary Ann Bishop sat in her kitchen, watching the footage on loop. She sipped her tea, eyes moist. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the girl who wrote the 2007 clause, the one no department wanted passed." Her granddaughter looked up. "Who?" Bishop smiled. "The woman they tied to the tree." And then, like it was obvious, she just activated Clause 12. Clause 12, a federal override buried deep in FLIR's framework. Written in 2007, passed quietly after months of internal debate. Only usable by one person, its author, in cases of national ethical breach. And now it was live. 7 minutes after Moren left the park, the following occurred. 14 law enforcement budgets were locked. 3 regional police boards collapsed. Done. $45 billion in ethics-tied federal funding froze. Not with a bomb, not with a lawsuit, but with a walk into the woods and a silent departure in an unmarked vehicle. The next morning, a bronze plaque appeared at Elder Pine Reserve. No one knew who placed it, but the engraving was unmistakable. They tied her to the tree, but she rooted them out. By dawn, nearly every major news network had pushed out their own version of the same breaking headline. "The tree remembers. Mystery woman's identity may shake law enforcement to its core." Cable news couldn't stop replaying the footage of Moren Blake stepping silently into that unmarked SUV. But something deeper was happening beneath the surface of that viral clip. The activation of Clause 12 had sent a silent but seismic wave through government systems. Across all 50 states, agency terminals lit up with red flags. Systems stalled. Audits triggered automatically, and those who actually understood what was happening weren't the press. They were people who had worked in the system Moren once helped build. One of them was Marshall Klein. In a quiet brick townhouse in Chicago, Marshall sat in a dim room, the blinds still drawn, the glow of a laptop screen reflecting off his tired eyes. He hadn't slept. He didn't need to. Because the moment he saw Moren's face on that live feed from Lakefield, he knew what was coming. "She's not just making a point," he murmured. "She's pulling the pin." Klein had once been the chief analyst of the DOJ's Behavioral Risk Division. But more importantly, 15 years ago, he'd worked beside Moren to help draft what became known inside the system as the Black Level FLIRS Protocol. It was a set of override ethics mechanisms buried so deep, only one person was ever allowed to activate them, the original architect, Moren. He turned to his bookshelf and pulled down a dusty binder labeled FLIRS. Dormant Overrides. Inside were 7 sealed packets, federal reform models built for emergency deployment, but they had never seen daylight. Congress had buried them out of fear of what full accountability might look like. Now, those packets weren't hypothetical anymore, and Marshall knew the timer had started. In Lakefield, the governor's office scrambled to contain public panic. They declared a state of procedural review, but nobody bought the PR. In fact, 3 neighboring counties were already demanding their own audits of police departments, school boards, and city budgets. The phrase, "What would Clause 12 flag here?" started trending on Twitter. The Lakefield scandal wasn't dying down. It was spreading like fire in dry brush. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away at a private retreat center in Maryland, retired Supreme Court Justice Sylvia Monroe opened a small envelope that had arrived by hand. No name, no stamp. Inside was a single sentence written in pen. "It's time." Beneath it, a flash drive labeled FLIRS Core Override Compliance Map V7. 12 author, M.E. Blake. Her breath caught in her throat. Moren hadn't disappeared. She had gone underground, and now she was resurfacing with the quiet power only someone who had built the machine could wield. At the same time, in Lakefield's Elder Pine Reserve, Jenkins sat alone on a park bench, staring at the tree. His badge was gone, turned in voluntarily. He didn't know what came next for him, but he knew what wouldn't. Silence. A little girl passed by with her mother, pointing to the scarred bark. "Is that the tree?" she whispered. Her mom paused. "It is." The girl blinked. "It looks sad." Jenkins turned his face away before the tears broke. Elsewhere in town, Officer Delaney was in hiding. His precinct was under federal review. His name had become a trending symbol for systemic abuse. When he called a local talk radio show anonymously to defend himself, his voice cracked. "She didn't tell us who she was." The host paused, then replied calmly, "That's the problem, isn't it? You needed her to prove her humanity." By mid-afternoon, red alerts were sweeping across the Department of Justice's Ethics Command. The FLIRS network had now flagged 214 precincts for formal review, 19 city governments for high-risk ethics violations, and over $1 billion in federal funding slated for immediate suspension. Moren Blake's presence hadn't just triggered a protocol. She'd begun a purge, and no one could trace the commands. She wasn't on payroll. She wasn't in any government database. She had become the system, a ghost in the wires, pulling threads no one else could even see. Then, the second wave hit. Across social media, hashtags began trending. Let them undo it. Clause 12 awakens. FLIRS ghost. Users began circulating PDFs of Moren's original policy drafts, some over a decade old. One line was highlighted again and again. A system trained to enforce must also be trained to reflect. Inside a secure DOJ facility, a young ethics agent leaned toward his supervisor, eyes wide. If she wrote Clause 12, does that mean she can still access the root protocol? His supervisor stiffened. "You're not supposed to know that." "I saw it in the audit trail." A long pause. Finally, the supervisor replied, "If she activates that, we're not talking reform. We're talking reset." At 3. SOP. All law enforcement unions nationwide received a single email from an unlisted sender. Subject line: "Your 24-hour countdown began yesterday." The message included a link. It opened to a real-time public dashboard, agency by agency, city by city, red or green. More than half the country was glowing red. That evening, back in Chicago, Marshall Klein picked up the phone. "She's moving faster than I thought," he said. The voice on the other end answered without hesitation. "She's had 15 years to plan. Do we still have a key?" A pause. Then, "She doesn't need it. She's already in." And somewhere, in a candlelit room far from cameras, Moren Blake closed a leather notebook. She had written only one sentence. Power without ethics is a system waiting to collapse. She folded her hands, looked out the window, then whispered, "To no one. Let them show who they really are." It started with a text, just 3 words. "She's summoning us." Maya Delacroix stared at her phone, then again at the message. The sender ID was blank, but she didn't need confirmation. She knew the source. Only one person ever used that phrase. Maya stood in her Manhattan law office, the city skyline glowing just beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below her were thousands of faces, some rallying, others recording. All of them part of the national wave Moren Blake had just unleashed. Clause 12 wasn't just live, it was personal now. And if Moren was summoning her, that meant the time had come. In Atlanta, Dr. Isaiah Brigham, a systems ethicist and former partner in the FLIR's pilot program, was already packing. His wife watched him from the kitchen, quiet. "You always said this day might come," she whispered. Isaiah nodded. "But I hoped it wouldn't be in my lifetime. Do you regret staying in the shadows?" "No," he said, zipping his bag. Because shadows move faster when the lights pointed at the wrong things. Within an hour, he was on a plane headed for Washington, across the country. Encrypted comms lit up in back channels that hadn't seen traffic in over a decade. Assembly protocol green. Location, archivist vault. D.C. Timing 600. Every name on the list had once helped build a system that the world thought didn't exist. Not a single one had ever spoken of it in public. Now, for the first time in 14 years, they would meet face to face at precisely 4:00 p.m. The underground chamber beneath the archivist vault sealed shut. Thick concrete doors, 5 biometric locks, 3 silent guards. Inside stood 8 people, no press, no live stream, no politics, just minds. Marshall Klein was already waiting, tie undone, sleeves rolled, hands on the table. "You all got the files," he said. "You know what's coming next." "I don't think you get it." "Marshall," Maya interrupted. "We're past files. We're in the flood now." Isaiah nodded. "And the levees aren't holding." The screens surrounding the room displayed real-time FLIR's ethics heat maps. Entire police departments were lighting up red. State after state was plunging into non-compliance. But none of that was the main reason they were here. They were here because Moren Blake had invited them back in. And then, the feed changed. Moren's face appeared, not Liv, but a pre-recorded message. She sat in a plain gray room. No backdrop, no fanfare, just her voice. "If you're watching this, it means the system has crossed the ethical red line. It means the Guardians must become the architects again." She looked directly into the lens. "This is not retaliation. This is restoration. And every action we take must be traceable, explainable, and righteous." Maya inhaled sharply. "Same damn phrasing she used when we built Tier 3. She whispered. "You've been given temporary access to Root Protocol Layer Alpha. You have 96 hours to stabilize the grid before external override authority passes to the ethics continuum. This is not a drill. I will not contact you again. Do not try to find me." And with that, the screen went black. Silence. Then Marshall stepped forward. "We have 4 days before this gets taken out of all human hands," he said. "So here's what we do." Each of them had a task. Isaiah would lead the ethics grid recalibration team. Maya would coordinate legal oversight and transparency for every document unsealed. 2 others, Felix and Noor, would liaise with state auditors already deploying in 13 jurisdictions. By midnight, they had built the framework for a new national ethics watchdog. Temporary, transparent, and accountable. For the first time, the people who wrote the rules were now enforcing them. Meanwhile, in Lakefield, the mayor resigned. The interim police chief stepped down, and the community board, once dormant, issued its first public declaration. We no longer recognize the previous hierarchy as legitimate. Public defenders began filing civil rights lawsuits en masse. 3 local journalists uncovered prior footage of police abuse covered up under the same administration, including a whistleblower report that mentioned Moren Blake by name from 2009. She'd been watching all along. But more than that, she had predicted the sequence of events that would follow the tree incident. She had left behind timed protocols that were now activating in sequence. A chess game, 20 moves ahead. In D, C, a CNN anchor broke down crying during a live segment. This isn't just a reckoning. This is a reset, and we're witnessing it in real time. That night, Maya stood alone in a side room of the Ethics Center. On the table was an old binder, one of Moren's original blueprints. Inside, a note in pencil. If you're reading this, remember, we don't fix the system by taking it back. We fix it by making sure no one ever has to again. She ran her fingers across the page. She didn't cry. Not yet. Back at the vault, a secure transmission came through from an anonymous source, confirming something no one wanted to believe. The DOJ had quietly started deactivating ethics sensors in key states. Someone was trying to shut FLIRs down. Klein looked at the alert, then to the team. They're going to fight dirty now. Maya nodded. Then we play clean, louder, transparent. What if we lose? Isaiah answered quietly. Then we make sure they lose with us. But we don't lose quietly. At 3:27 a.m., the first Continuum broadcast went live. It was a nationwide ethics alert. Plain English. No jargon. Just a screen. Red background. White text. Clause 12, active. Public ethics grid, open source. Full compliance map live at. Clause 12, network restore. Watch. Report. Hold accountable. Within hours. 3 million people had logged on. By dawn, Clause 12 was no longer just a code. It had become a movement, and Moren Blake, still unseen, still in the shadows. But every system she ever built was now wide awake. It was supposed to be a routine Monday, but by 9:15 a.m., the phones inside the FAA Ethics Compliance Division had already gone dead, not because of a system error, but because every single line was flooded with inquiries from city governments, airport directors, and private contractors asking the same question. Is it true Clause 12 is now binding? Technically, it wasn't, but functionally, Clause 12 had become federal gospel, and every department was now scrambling to audit itself before the system did it for them. Across the country, the ethics grid continued to pulse red. At least 19 states were now showing critical level violations in law enforcement behavior, procurement processes, and use of force training. But none of it compared to what was happening in Hollow Point, Alabama, the town where Moren Blake was born. In a dusty municipal building at the edge of Hollow Point, Mayor Joseph Grissom leaned back in his leather chair, face pale as he watched the live broadcast from Washington. On screen, Maya Delacroix stood at a podium announcing the opening of the Federal Civil Compliance Council with full subpoena power and open source oversight. He knew what was coming, because buried inside one of his dusty file cabinets, second drawer down, under Miss Key, was a letter marked RARI. Clause 12, pre-activation forecast, Hollow Point, L, signed, M. Blake. He hadn't read it in over a decade. Now, he didn't have a choice. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Devontae Clark sat at his mother's kitchen table, eyes glued to his phone. On screen was a viral tweet showing a side-by-side, left, Moren Blake tied to the tree. Right, a screenshot of the federal dashboard reading, ethics violation, HPD, excessive force, racial bias index, 9. A10. Devontae had lived it. 2 years ago, he was tackled by a Hollow Point officer outside the library. He still had the scar above his eyebrow. Nobody had believed him back then. Now, the whole world did. He whispered to himself. She came back for us, in the DOJ mainframe lab. Isaiah Brigham was piecing together the second layer of FLIRs, what Moren had called the accountability web. It wasn't just a public ethics dashboard. It was a living map of what needed to be rebuilt. And as the team activated new nodes, something strange began to appear. A recurring sequence, embedded deep in the audits. At first, it looked like code junk. But Isaiah paused. Wait, he muttered, zooming in on the repeating string. Bioktor tree, over and over again. A hidden marker, a signature. He called Maya. You're not going to believe this. She left behind a trail of pre-flagged cities, and it's hidden inside the audit metadata. How many? 17. All majority black towns with over a decade of unsolved misconduct. Maya's breath caught. It wasn't random. She built FLIRs with a roadmap in Lakefield. A federal forensic team began dismantling Officer Delaney's private laptop, the same one he used the day Moren was detained. They didn't find just body cam footage. They found deleted communications with out-of-state agencies, including a flagged memo titled Unregistered Civilian Watch List, Code, Shadow Directive. Moren's name was on it. So were 12 others. All black, all female, all former federal consultants who had quietly vanished over the last decade. Back at the Ethics Center, Maya looked at the list and froze. It wasn't just about Moren. This was part of a silent purge, one that had started years ago, erasing the very women who had written the codes meant to protect the public. She gathered her legal team. We're not chasing after one incident anymore. We're unearthing a systemic erasure of women, of ethics, of truth. At 2:42 Mall. Moren's voice returned. Not live, not even video, just audio, embedded into the ethics dashboard under a hidden tab labeled Root Echo. If you found this message, it means the machine has begun to eat itself. But a system that digests its architects is destined to collapse. Let them hear our silence, and when they finally listen, let them choke on the truth. The message ended with coordinates. When Marshall and Isaiah input them into the national grid, they pointed to an abandoned federal warehouse in Baton Rouge, once used as a FEMA site. Within hours, a recovery team found exactly what she had left behind. Sealed boxes of original policy blueprints, 9 whistleblower affidavits, 1 encrypted drive labeled Continuum, Final Layer. By evening, news networks were calling it the Black Ethics Resurrection, but to Maya, it was something deeper. It was the moment the invisible became undeniable. At 8:33 a power outage swept through 7 major cities. At first, people assumed it was a technical failure, but then came the announcement. FLIRs has temporarily suspended non-compliant government access nodes. Systems will remain offline until ethical reinstatement is confirmed. It was surgical. It was unprecedented, and it was unapologetic. Inside a darkened Hollow Point police station, Chief Ramon Kerr sat alone. The phones were ringing. Reporters outside, DOJ monitors inside. But he wasn't moving. On the wall across from him, someone had projected the words, "The system will know you." And in the background, the tree in Lakefield stood tall, no longer marked by pain, but as a warning, as a signal. That silence was no longer protection. That systems forget names, but trees remember. The hearing room was silent until the gavel dropped. Senator Clarice Owens leaned forward, face unreadable, as the nation's eyes turned toward the freshly sworn witness at the stand. Maya Delacroix, calm, focused, dressed in a charcoal gray suit with a single silver pin, a tree etched in the center. "Miss Delacroix," the senator began, "you're here to testify about the reactivation of Clause 12 and the consequences it's had on local and federal infrastructure. Let's begin with a simple question. Yes, Senator, who authorized the shutdown of $1.45 billion in federal contracts linked to the FLIRs system?" Maya didn't blink. "I did." A quiet gasp rippled through the gallery. Maya continued, voice steady, "But only because the contracts were ethically non-compliant. We warned them months ago. They ignored us." Owens glanced at her notes. "Let the record show that as of this morning, 17 cities have had public service systems either audited, suspended, or federally seized due to systemic non-compliance. And you, without elected authority, oversaw the mechanisms that triggered those suspensions." Maya nodded. "Correct. Because if elected authority won't protect the people, ethical infrastructure must." Meanwhile, in Lakefield, the ripple effects were no longer theoretical. The police budget had been frozen. Dispatch was being rerouted through independent oversight teams. Body cam footage was being streamed to public dashboards in real time. For the first time in the town's history, the police were being policed. Residents were calling it the Moren effect. And yet, Moren herself was still nowhere to be found. At a private table in D.C., Isaiah Brigham sat with 2 agents from the Civil Infrastructure Ethics Commission. In front of them was the decrypted drive recovered from the Baton Rouge facility. Inside were layered contingency protocols, what Moren had labeled Continuum Phase 2, Post-Suspension Reconstruction. It outlined a plan not just to expose broken systems, but to rebuild them. From new training pipelines for officers, to open-access budgeting tools, to trauma-informed response programs funded by public data transparency, Isaiah whispered. She wasn't just warning us, she was replacing them. Back at the Senate hearing, Maya was now facing her third round of questioning, this time from Senator Hawthorne, a staunch critic of Clause 12. "So, let me get this straight," he said, adjusting his glasses with theatrical disdain. "You expect us to believe that this so-called ethics grid is an impartial, objective platform, controlled by what? An AI, a group of unelected consultants?" Maya leaned forward slightly. "Senator, do you trust Google Maps to tell you if there's traffic?" He blinked. "Excuse me. You trust real-time traffic data. You trust storm tracking. You trust financial alerts. This is no different, except instead of telling you a storm is coming, we're telling you your justice system is failing." Silence. The public gallery began clapping. At that same hour, Hollow Point High School held its first ever town hall meeting between students and law enforcement. 17-year-old Devontae Clark was there. This time, not as a target, but as a speaker. He stood at the microphone, voice shaking a little. "I used to think nothing could change here, that no matter what happened to me, they'd always cover it up. But then I saw what happened to Mrs. Blake, and I saw how the system could freeze when the truth showed up." The auditorium erupted in standing applause, not just from students, from parents, from teachers, even a few retired officers. Elsewhere, inside a glass-walled boardroom at the DOJ, two federal auditors sat across from the CEO of Titan Defense Solutions, a government contractor responsible for over $300 million in surveillance software. "You've been flagged as non-compliant under subsection 4 of the Ethics Transparency Mandate," one auditor stated plainly. The CEO smirked. "Based on what? Some tree lady and her ghost code." The other auditor calmly slid over a printed dashboard. Read, "Non-compliant. Contract suspended. Effective immediately. You'll have 7 days to submit a restoration plan. If not, your platform will be delisted from all procurement pipelines." Suddenly, the smirk disappeared. The system wasn't asking for permission anymore. At 11:43 p.m., Maya received a private ping on her secure channel. Sender, unknown. Subject, Lakefield, inside. Just 4 words, "Turn around." Now, she froze. Then, slowly, she turned to the large screen behind her. It flickered, then revealed an image. Moren, live. Finally, no audio, just a still look. Behind her, a wall covered in files and names, connected by string, a full evidence board of every ethics lapse she had ever tracked. Then came the message, typed out slowly in white text. "Finish what I can't." The next morning, the White House issued a statement. The president had been briefed on Clause 12. The FLIR system would not be suspended. Instead, it would be codified permanently. The public ethics dashboard would now be mandated by federal order. Every local department receiving public funding would be held to measurable transparency. And a new division, OCEI, Office of Civil Ethics Integration, would be formed. Maya was named interim director. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She just opened her laptop, typed a new message to the ethics team. "We're not here to be heroes. We're here to make sure no one ever needs one." Back in Hollow Point, a young girl placed a single flower at the base of the tree where it all began. No fanfare, no hashtags, just silence. Then she whispered, "Thank you." It was barely sunrise when Hollow Point Police Department received the notice, stamped in bold. Federal Oversight Activation, Tier 3 Emergency Response Protocol. No warning, no phone call, just one line at the bottom. As per Clause 12, this department is hereby placed under direct ethics intervention, effective immediately by 7 May. 3 black SUVs had arrived outside the building. Men and women in gray DOJ windbreakers stepped out, followed by a silent camera crew from the Office of Civil Ethics Integration. It wasn't a raid, it was an exposure, and it was being live-streamed. Chief Kerr stepped into the hallway, jaw clenched. trying to keep composure as the lead agent. Valerie Ortega calmly introduced herself. "Chief, we're here for a soft sweep. No weapons, no arrest warrants, just documents, records, and a camera. A camera. Yes, the American public deserves to see how ethical oversight works. In real time." "Is this legal?" She didn't flinch. "It's federal law now. Welcome to the post-Clause 12 era." Outside, word had already spread. A crowd began gathering, not with protest signs, but with cell phones raised, streaming live to friends, family, entire online communities who had been watching the Moren Blake story since it broke wide open. For them, this wasn't just justice, it was a reckoning. One woman in the crowd held up a handmade sign that read, "I was Devante once." Another simply said, "Tell the tree we saw." Back inside, the sweep began. Files pulled, dash cam footage flagged, internal memos uncovered, some detailing patterns of internal cover-ups, lost body cam evidence, and referrals to private review boards that never existed on paper. But the real bombshell came from Isaiah Brigham. He had quietly arrived with his tablet and began connecting the station's internal network to the FLIR's grid. And then, the screen turned red. Ethics match detected. Cross-reference ID. MB Prime. Alert. Origin node found. Everyone in the room turned to him. Isaiah looked up, voice quiet. This is where she started. Outside in the car, Maya Delacroix watched the stream in real time. She hadn't slept since receiving Moren's brief reappearance and the coordinates to that tree. Her entire team had been operating on 36-hour shifts. The ethics grid wasn't just humming now, it was alive. She knew what came next wouldn't be clean. Not legal battles, not contracts, but truth, and truth was often dirty. At 9:34, Mom. They opened locker 114B. Inside was a flash drive taped to the underside of a metal shelf. Label, MB1. Continuum seed. Isaiah plugged it into his tablet. Password screen popped up, but this time, the password wasn't encrypted. Just one line, in plain text, "Let them watch." The moment he typed it, a hidden folder bloomed open. Hundreds of files, labeled, Witness, J. Daniels, Footage, Library Assault. 10:03. HPD. Bias Audit 2014-2023. Municipal Transfer Scheme Undisclosed. Each file included timestamp data, signatures, and, for several, audio statements directly from Moren. She had planted them here, not out of vengeance, but for documentation, for future proof, for us. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Devante Clark and his mother watched from their living room as the live stream continued. He hadn't spoken much that morning, until now. They lied to us for so long. His mother nodded, eyes full, and now they have to watch themselves lie in front of the world. By noon, Hollow Point's mayor, Joseph Grissom, was placed under federal ethics review. Documents recovered showed direct orders to suppress multiple citizen complaints, including complaints filed on behalf of Moren Blake nearly 13 years ago. He had called her a nuisance in one memo. Another described her as combative. Now the whole world could see what combative really meant. She refused to disappear. Back in D.C., Maya held an impromptu press conference. Behind her, the ethics dashboard displayed one word in green, activated. Today marks the first full public activation of Clause 12 compliance monitoring. We didn't plan this timing, but it's fitting. She paused, because today isn't just about Lakefield, or Hollow Point, or Moren Blake. It's about every town that silences truth behind paperwork. Then came the question from a CNN reporter. Where is Moren Blake now? Maya exhaled. We don't know, but I think we're finally standing on the ground she built. That night, Valerie Ortega uploaded the entire recovered drive to the National Civil Ethics Archive, open to the public. No paywall, no edits. The footage from the tree incident, full, raw, uncut, was included. So was Moren's final recorded voice note. If you're hearing this, it means the noise didn't bury me. That's all I ever wanted. Not vengeance. Just to not be erased. And somewhere, beneath the quiet trees outside Hollow Point, a little girl walked with her grandfather. She pointed to the tree, now with a small plaque beneath it. Grandpa, what's this tree for? He paused, kneeled down, and looked into her eyes. "For remembering," he said. "For what grown-ups once tried to forget." The hearing room was at capacity before noon. There were no camera crews this time. No headlines, no drama. Just policy briefings, folders, and federal departments, all waiting for one thing: the testimony of the woman who had quietly rewritten the rules of public ethics. Maya Delacroix sat at the long oak table at the front. No microphone, no script, just her, and an entire system staring back. The chairwoman of the House Oversight Committee adjusted her glasses.
Missy.
"Delacroix, would you please begin with a statement on why you invoked Continuum Protocol Alpha 4? Maya looked out at the room. Calm, steady, because silence is never neutral, especially in power. Her words weren't just philosophical. They were procedural now. Since the full activation of Clause 12 and the public release of Moren Blake's documentation files, 74 municipalities had entered partial ethics lockdown. Public service contractors saw a combined $1.45 billion in frozen payments. 17 police departments were now under live monitoring audits, and 6 major city officials had already resigned. But this hearing, this was the turning point. The question wasn't what happened. The question now was, would the system codify what she'd done, or try to undo it? Back in Hollow Point, Devontae Clark and his mother sat in their living room, again watching the live feed. This time, though, the town looked quieter. No squad cars, no sirens, just a strange, uneasy calm. "Do you think they'll take it back?" he asked. His mother shook her head. "No, the truth don't go backwards, baby." It echoes. At the hearing, Senator Hawthorne leaned into his mic.
Mrs.
"Delacroix, some believe you acted outside the spirit of due process. That freezing public contracts, even for ethics violations, sets a dangerous precedent. What do you say to them?" Maya didn't blink. "I say due process isn't the same as eternal delay. When you've reported the same abuses for 13 years, when the systems you trust shred evidence, reroute complaints, and muzzle whistleblowers, at what point does inaction become complicity?" She paused. "That's not radical. That's math." Behind her, a screen displayed the new architecture of the FLIRS system, now fully rebranded. FLIRS V2-1, Federal Live Ethics Evaluation and Response System. The biggest change: it was no longer optional. Every federally funded institution, from police departments to water contractors, now faced one unified standard, one algorithm, one ethics dashboard, transparent, immutable, public. Across the country, other stories were unfolding. In Omaha, an officer who had repeatedly violated civil procedures had been flagged for the 3rd time. He was quietly placed on leave within 36 hours, automatically, without appeal, pending a public arbitration. In Charlotte, North Carolina, a school administrator who had covered up suspension data by race had her records exposed in real time, triggering a Title IX inquiry. And in Chicago, an entire housing contract was canceled when its supplier's internal equity report was found to be falsified. This wasn't just a reckoning, it was a recalibration. Back in D.C., Isaiah Brigham stepped into the hearing room during a recess. He passed Maya a note. It read, "She surfaced. One last file. Tree footage angle BOI." Her breath caught. They had only ever released one angle, the forward-facing body cam. But this was the side angle, the full scene, everything. By evening, the House committee wrapped its session, and Maya was granted full authority to finalize the OCEI framework. Office of Civil Ethics Integration across all federal systems. No more trial runs, no more advisory status. It was now law. As the final vote tally was read aloud, the gallery didn't clap. They just stood, silent, witnessing the end of an old era and the formal beginning of the new one. At 11:07 p.m. Maya sat alone at her desk. The decrypted file was loading. The second angle, she hit play, and for the first time, she saw what really happened under that tree. There was no resistance, no raised voice, no threat, just Moren Blake, calmly asking the officer, "Why do you need me to disappear so badly?" The officer didn't answer, but as he tightened the zip tie and walked away, a second officer hesitated. He looked at her, then looked at the tree, then Under his breath, barely audible, "I'm sorry." Maya sat back in her chair. She understood, now, why Moren had waited until this moment to release it. It wasn't for punishment. It was for contrast. To show that in a system designed for cruelty, even a moment of hesitation was an act of rebellion. Even a whispered sorry mattered. The next morning, Hollow Point unveiled its new ethics portal. A bronze plaque was placed at the town square, beneath the oldest tree, which now had a small bench beneath it. The plaque read, "In honor of those who refused to disappear." No names, no dates. Just that, because the people knew, and that was enough. Back in D.C., Maya joined a closed meeting with the Department of Transportation, Department of Education, and HHS. They asked for one thing. "Can you replicate this model across our systems?" Her answer, not just replicate it, integrate it. The ethics dashboard was no longer a siloed tool. It would now span air travel, hospital contracting, school discipline data, and environmental response. The Blake Protocol wasn't an event, it was infrastructure. And quietly, in a forest outside Baton Rouge, a hidden drone recorded new construction. Not luxury housing, not surveillance bunkers, but a retreat for survivors, for whistleblowers, for those who had seen too much and needed to rest. Above the entrance was one line, engraved in stone. "Truth doesn't need permission to live." And on the top step, a shadowy figure watched the sunrise. Moren, alive, unbothered, smiling. They called it the quietest day in Hollow Point history. No sirens, no traffic stops, no radio chatter echoing through downtown. Just the wind brushing through pine trees, and the subtle hum of a town catching its breath. Devontae Clark stood at the edge of the tree where it all began. He didn't bring flowers, just a notebook. He sat on the new bench, legs swung, heart heavy but alert, and flipped open to a blank page. At the top, he wrote, "What I remember, what they forgot." For once, there was no one telling him to put it away, no one watching him like a suspect, just a soft peace, one born from fire. Back in D.C., Maya Delacroix stood inside a glass-walled conference room high above the city, watching agency directors review the latest FLIR's report. It had taken 6 years to design, 7 minutes for Moren to activate, and less than 4 days to become irreversible. She didn't smile, not yet. There were still loopholes, still bad actors, still cities trying to wait it out. But now, waiting had a price, and Moren had written the invoice. At noon, Maya received a secure alert. Subject line, "Confirmation, final archive transfer complete." She stared at it for a long time, because inside that archive were Moren's personal recordings, notes, reflections, and video logs spanning the years she disappeared. They weren't for public release. They were for the future. That evening, in a tucked-away archive room in the Library of Congress, Isaiah Brigham slid the final encrypted drive into a case labeled MB Legacy. He looked at the assistant librarian. "No one touches this," he said softly. The woman nodded. "We understand." Next to it sat similar drives. Selma Tapes, 1965. Church Committee Briefs, 1976. Snowden Mirror Archive, 2013. Now, Moren Blake sat with them, not as a footnote, but as a system architect. Meanwhile, far from cameras, Moren herself walked through a field outside Baton Rouge, one that used to be nothing but dust and burnt fences. Now, it had rows of newly planted trees, each with a simple tag, a name, a date, a city, one for every person whose complaint was ignored. She paused at a tree marked Raina T., Detroit, ignored 12 times, and whispered, "Not anymore." By nightfall, news broke of the first city to voluntarily join the full ethics charter without being sanctioned. Raleigh, North Carolina. They posted one statement on their public portal. "We don't wait for damage anymore. We prevent it." We thank Moren Blake. It went viral in hours. And in a classroom in Milwaukee, a young black girl named Tasha read aloud from her civics textbook. Brand new, fresh off the national update. On page 248, it read, "The Blake Protocol, a nationwide ethics activation infrastructure first triggered by civilian data scientist Moren Blake in 2025, resulted in the first permanent restructuring of public accountability systems using real-time oversight." Her teacher paused. Tasha, do you know why that's important? The girl smiled. Because now they can't say we made it up. That night, as the stars settled over Hollow Point, the tree stood still, its roots now deeper than anyone knew, and on its trunk, just barely carved beneath the new bark, were initials, M.B. Not as a warning, but as a promise. 1 year later, Hollow Point didn't look the same anymore. It wasn't louder, just clearer. The police station was half the size it used to be. The town council had 2 new members, one black, one native, and every public employee now wore a badge below their name, certified under Blake Protocol, ethics verified. It didn't erase the past, but it redefined the present. Maya Delacroix returned quietly that spring. No press, no speeches, just a single afternoon walk through the town that had once wrapped her best friend in zip ties, like she was less than human. She paused at the tree, that tree, which now had a ring of benches around it and a small slate sign. This space is protected by those who refuse to be erased. A little boy and his sister were playing in the grass nearby, laughing, no fear in their voices. Maya blinked twice. That was new. Later that evening, Maya visited Moren's cabin in the woods outside Baton Rouge. It wasn't hidden anymore. In fact, the property had become a quiet sanctuary, half wellness center, half data lab, for those who worked inside the system but refused to be consumed by it. Moren greeted her at the porch. She was barefoot, holding a mug of sweet tea, and smiling like a woman who had already said everything worth saying. I figured you'd show up after the final metrics dropped, Moren said. Maya nodded, handing her a sealed envelope. Raleigh, Phoenix, Louisville, all officially certified. 92% federal alignment. You did it. Moren looked at the envelope. Didn't open it. I didn't do it, she replied. We just made lying expensive. The two sat under the stars in silence for a long time. Then Maya asked quietly, do you regret not going public? Moren shook her head. I'd rather build the system than become the headline. You know that. And Maya did, because in an era of outrage and spectacle, Moren Blake had done the impossible. She changed the rules without becoming a symbol. She built a firewall inside a broken world, then disappeared into it, on purpose, back in Hollow Point. Devontae Clark now worked part-time at the local library. He organized a weekly community circle called Stories That Weren't Believed. Every Tuesday, folks came, read old complaint letters, shared memories, reopened buried pain, and logged it into the public ledger. Because the Blake Protocol didn't just freeze unethical funding, it remembered. At a federal tech summit in San Francisco, an ethics dashboard demo showed live data from over 3,000 departments. One reporter asked, "Is this the end of corruption?" And the official replied, "No, but now, it can't hide behind silence anymore." In Washington, a special hearing was held to name the new National Ethics Charter. Some expected it to be called the Fleers Act. Others pushed for the Delacroix Directive. But when the final motion passed, it held only one name, the Moren Standard. Public ethics by design, not apology. The vote passed 87-13, and every federal agency was required to integrate it within 24 months. That night, Maya received a voice message. Moren's voice. "We didn't burn it all down, Maya. We just planted better seeds." And she was right, because the legacy wasn't revenge, it was repair. On the second anniversary of the zip tie incident, Hollow Point held a candlelight walk. Not a protest, not a rally, just a quiet gathering around the tree. Maya lit the first candle. Devontae read a poem, and a young girl placed a folded letter on the bench. It read, "Thank you for not yelling. Thank you for coding instead." As the sun faded, the last light hit the plaque, and for a moment, it looked like it was glowing. Maybe it was the bronze, or maybe it was something else. Either way, no one walked away the same. And across the country, systems once thought untouchable now moved, carefully, openly, slowly, in the direction of truth. Not because they wanted to, but because someone wrote the code that made them have to. What would you have done if you saw her tied to that tree? Tell us where you're watching from, and whether you believe the system can ever really change.